Today, we're going to be talking about 5 key reasons to invest in the Brisbane property market. Brisbane is Australia's 3rd largest capital city, and there's so much upside potential in this market. Number 1 on our list is the population growth that's expected to happen in Brisbane. So the total population in Greater Brisbane was 3.8 million people in 2020. And the forecasts say that we're going to have roughly 5.44 million people in Brisbane around 2041. That's an extra 1.65 million people moving into the Greater Brisbane area. You can see on screen here that that's a 43.4% increase since 2020. And all of the Greater Brisbane areas are going to benefit from this population growth. Some of this growth is going to come from interstate migration, where people are looking for that sunny Queensland change and to move up into the Brisbane market. And we're also expecting a lot of overseas migration to flood into the Brisbane market. As you can see on screen here, these are the local government areas across Greater Brisbane. So Brisbane, the Gold Coast, Moreton Bay, Logan, Sunshine Coast and Ipswich. And all of these areas are expected to have upticks in population from 2026 to 2031 all the way out to 2041. Now, if we just use a run rate of the rough growth from 2020 to 2041, it will be roughly around 80,000 people a year. So by the time 2030, 2032 rolls around, we could see around 800,000 to 1 million people moving into the Greater Brisbane market. One of the strongest drivers for growth is population or demand to live in a certain area. So with all these people migrating from both interstate and overseas into the Greater Brisbane market over the next 10 to 20 years, we're going to see that increased demand for property. Whether people are looking for their own home or a rental opportunity, people are going to be putting pressure on prices by looking for in-demand areas with limited land supply. So with all these people moving into the Brisbane market, item number 2 as why Brisbane might be a great place to invest your money in terms of property would be the jobs growth. For people to be able to pay more for their own home or for an investment opportunity, they need to be able to have the income to service the debt. So there's a graph here on the ABS which compares our major capital cities and the average incomes people earn. As you can see on screen here, we've got a comparison of the median weekly earnings by state and territory, all the way from the ACT through to Tasmania. And this compared the weekly earnings between August 2015 and August 2021 based on the ABS statistics. You can see that Sydney had the highest median weekly earnings of $1,300 per week, followed by Perth, Melbourne and Brisbane at $1,200 per week. So when you compare the major capital cities, Brisbane is not far behind on average earnings in terms of those major markets. But if you compare the property prices between Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, for example, Sydney and Melbourne are significantly more expensive. This means based on the average incomes, people are going to have more of an ability to pay a higher amount for property. With the current unemployment rate at around the 3.5% mark in Australia at this point in time, people are going to be able to have a job, and if those jobs pay around that $1,200 per week compared to Sydney at $1,300 per week, there's an expectation that people will continue to see wage increases over time and potentially be able to pay more for property, driving up capital growth. So we've had a chat about where Brisbane's population is heading, with over 1 million people expected in the next 10 to 15 years. We've had a chat about the jobs and how people earn similar amounts to Melbourne and Sydney markets. Now, what happens is we've got parents who have jobs and have moved to the Brisbane market. What are they going to want to do? They're going to want to send their kids to a fantastic school. And Brisbane has great schools in spades. Whether you're looking at the public system or the private school system, there are some amazing schools. For example, in the public school system, some standout schools would be Brisbane State High, Kelvin Grove State College, or Mansfield State High School. Mansfield in particular, over the last 12 to 24 months, has seen an insane amount of growth. Because there has been such demand for those properties to get into that school catchment, we've seen homes in that area go from around that $600,000 to $800,000 all the way up to around the $1 million to $1.2 million. When those parents move to Brisbane and they're higher income earners, they're going to be looking to get their kids into an exceptional school. What this does for public schools is it creates demands for homes that sit in a certain school zone. So like Brisbane State High, like Mansfield, like Kelvin Grove State College, these areas that sit within the catchment zone of these specific schools are going to see a continued uptick in demand over time. Brisbane also has some fantastic private schools which have high academic results, a lot of co-curricular activities, both sporting and musical. An example of some private schools could be Brisbane Grammar, Somerville House, Nudgee College, or Churchie. As the property market is dominated by owner-occupiers, it's important to look for an owner-occupied property with that owner-occupier appeal. So when you're looking at school zones and you're looking at the Brisbane market, make sure you assess both the state and private schools for their long-term demand. Reason number 4 to invest in the Brisbane market is the amount of money being spent on roads and transport infrastructure. There's a lot of significant projects which have been brought forward to fast-track Brisbane's growth. For example, the Cross River Rail is due for completion in 2024. The Cross River Rail is a $5.4 billion project, and as you can see on screen, it's going to connect the north side of Brisbane to the south side with an underground rail network. It's going to start around the Dutton Park Boggo Road stations, work its way north through Woolloongabba, where our largest stadium is here in Brisbane, through Albert Street, Roma Street, and out to Exhibition Station. It's going to work in tandem with the existing rail line, which you can see in red on screen. And this $5.4 billion project is going to make access through the CBD a lot quicker in terms of the public transport system. The government is going to be spending a lot of money on these stations and gentrifying these locations. It's going to make it a lot easier to get from north to south or south to north quickly and access these sporting facilities and the inner city. Another major transport initiative which is underway and due to progress into 2024 is the Brisbane Metro network. The Brisbane Metro is essentially these train-like buses which can carry around 100 to 120 people. Instead of having light rail here in Brisbane, which was unfortunately demolished back by the previous councils, Brisbane was transformed into a large bus network city with a designated bus lane running from north to south. There's a northern busway and a southern busway. As you can see on screen here, there's going to be 2 metro lines. The southern line will run from Amel Plains all the way in to Roma Street Station, and the Metro 2 line will run from the Royal Brisbane Women's Hospital all the way down to the University of Queensland, where they're building a fast charging station. I'm very excited about the Brisbane Metro network. I was actually one of those people that caught the bus into the University of Queensland in my university days. So between the Cross River Rail and the Brisbane Metro, the network from the north side to the south side of Brisbane City is going to be far more interconnected by around about 2024-2025. Another really exciting project happening on the south side in Greater Brisbane is the Coomera Connector. They're currently undertaking work in stage 1 of the Coomera Connector, and the Australian and Queensland government have committed $2.16 billion to this project so far. This first stage is between Coomera and Nerang, and future stages will run all the way up to around Loganholme and Eagleby. Works on stage 1 are again expected to be completed around about 2024, with future stages expected to be completed around 2027 and 2030 depending on the timelines. One of the reasons the Coomera Connector is exciting is in that growth corridor where there's a lot of population flooding in between Brisbane and the Gold Coast. The Coomera Connector is going to essentially act as a second motorway. We have the original M1, and then we're also going to have the Coomera Connector running on the eastern side of the M1 to allow those suburbs to be interconnected and to try and pull some traffic off the M1 for people going all the way from the Sunshine Coast down to the Gold Coast and northern New South Wales. So there's 3 major projects which is going to improve the lifestyle here in Brisbane. The government is putting a lot of money into these deals and it's going to create jobs in the process. If you're getting value out of this video and you're excited to hear about item number 5 on today's list, make sure you drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel down below. Now, item number 5 is the Olympic Games. Now, this is the icing on the cake when it comes to Brisbane. We've talked about the population growth. We've talked about the jobs and the incomes in the Brisbane market. We've talked about the school zones and how there's going to be demand for both public and private schools moving forward. And we talked about the major infrastructure projects which allow Brisbane to be interconnected. Now, the Olympic Games is one of the key reasons all of these projects have been brought forward. The government is using the Olympic Games to accelerate projects around Woolloongabba, around these roads, around the infrastructure of the train and bus networks. And the Olympic Games is a transformational opportunity for Brisbane to put itself on the map as a global city. My opinion truly is that the Olympic Games is simply the icing on the cake. There's all these other factors to think about when it comes to the Brisbane market and the long-term growth potential that Brisbane has. In terms of where prices are going to go, everyone, crystal ball gazes here and there. My opinion is that we're probably going to see prices peak around that 2027, 2028, a little bit further out than the games actually arrive. This is because people are going to have information. We live in a digital age where everyone can get information at their fingertips, whether it's news articles, YouTube videos, or TikToks these days. People have a lot more information about what's happening and when that's expected. So with the hype around Brisbane and the Olympic Games, I think it's going to be priced in terms of property prices around that 2027 and 2028 mark. There's also going to be that influx of short-term demand in the Brisbane market around 2032, which is going to put, again, pressure on the property market for that period of time. Now, that's been 5 key reasons to invest in Brisbane. Now, I'm very bullish on the Brisbane market over the long term, and I also run a Brisbane-based buyers agency, so make sure you take everything I say with a grain of salt. If you want to have a chat about your situation and your short and long-term investing goals, and whether you might want to buy in the Brisbane market, book in a free strategy session with myself at purposeproperty.com.au. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like on this video. It really helps me out. Leave a comment down below. What do you think about the Brisbane market? Is it primed for long-term growth potential? Is Brisbane going to be a flat market over the next 10 years? Leave a comment. I'd love to have a chat with you down below. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and click this video over here for more things real estate, renovating, and financial freedom. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.